Hello, Rocky Ridge students. We are on Chapter 11 of Lunch Money, and I hope you are enjoying it as much as I am. Alright. How come they call it a black eye? Greg stared at his face in the boys' room mirror. It was Friday morning, 3 minutes before the first period, and his black eye was spectacular, just as the nurse had predicted. The deep semicircle was mostly a rich red and purple plum color, rimmed with brownish yellow highlights that arched all the way around his eyebrow. But there was no black at all. After the teasing from his big brothers the night before, Greg had gotten on the bus a good idea of what to expect from the guys at school. But nothing much happened. Each time the bus stopped, he had moved around scouting for comic book customers, and kids had said things like, "Nice shiner," or "Rough night, huh?" Several had asked him how it happened. And that was about it. It was a nice surprise. But as he left the washroom and made his way to Miss Sanborn's class, he had to work up some nerve. He only had 2 classes today with Mora. Math was one, and first period social studies was the other. He wouldn't get teased in math class. Mr. Z would see to that. But if word had gotten around that Mora had socked him, social studies could be a different story. Class began, and he could tell some students were whispering about him. But as Miss Sanborn took attendance, Greg was determined not to give it another thought. And anyway, he couldn't afford to. In social studies, daydreaming was dangerous. The day after each reading assignment, Miss Sanborn conducted a rapid-fire question and answer session, and class participation counted for 1/4 of everyone's grade. With his teacher's edition of World Cultures cradled in her arms, Miss Sanborn began pacing around the classroom, her words firing twice as fast as her footsteps. Mesopotamia, in Greek. What word does Eileen? Between the rivers, correct. Name one of the rivers, Daniel. The Tigris River, correct. And the other one, Brittany? The Euphrates River, correct. A large region in that area that includes Mesopotamia, Selena, the Fertile Triangle, halfway. The complete correct name of the region is Denis, the Fertile Crescent, correct. Another river that's in the Fertile Crescent, but not in Mesopotamia. Greg, the Nile River, correct. One of the great ancient culture associated with the Fertile Crescent. Carl? Greg was glad to be called on so early in the question and answer session. He could relax a little now, because there would probably be, at last, another 10 questions before Miss Sanborn called on him again. Like everyone else, Greg had his notebook open on his desk. They were all supposed to be taking notes, but Greg began sketching a picture of crayon riding an animal that looked like a sphinx. And on the face of the sphinx looked like, a little like Miss Sanborn. A folded strip of paper dropped into Greg's desk from behind him. He quickly put in his hand over it and didn't dare to turn to see who had thrown it. Miss Sanborn had just made a turn and headed back in his direction. The name of the modern nation that includes the largest part, what was called Mesopotamia. Ted, Iran, correct. Susan, same question. Iraq? Correct. In ancient Mesopotamia, their material, wood, was most often used for building. Enos? The teacher went past him, and Greg quickly folded the paper and held it flat on his notebook. It was a note. Holding his pencil and pretending to write, he read the message. Greg, read it again. Greg read it again, sorry. The message says, "I have to show you something after class, Mora. P.S. Guess what? I love comics." He'd seen kids passing notes before, but no one had ever slipped one to him. Sure, it was only Mora, but he had underlined the word love 5 times. Of course, she was talking about comics. Even so, it was a lot to take in all at once. was the most important use of clay, Greg? Writing more specific. Cuneiform on clay tablets? Correct. The river in Mesopotamia led to the invention of what important farming practice? Henry. It was a near miss. Had Miss Sanborn seen the note, because if she captured it and read it out loud. Greg crumbled the slip of paper back in his left hand and stuffed it into his pocket. Began taking detailed notes about ancient civilization, but over 80% of his mind was worried about current events. He thought, if Moira was trying to be like my friend, the answer to that seemed a lot like yes. But why? Because she loves comic books? That seemed odd and sudden. And if she does want to be friends, there was no clear answer to that one. Greg felt much more comfortable thinking of Moira as a nuisance or a competitor or even an enemy. Miss Sanborn's strolling quiz finally ended. During the class discussion that followed, it would have been easy for Greg to turn around and catch Moira's eye, look her in the face, and try to see what she was thinking. But he kept taking careful notes, and when Miss Sanborn let them begin their reading assignment, he could have turned and pretended to borrow something from Moira. Instead, he opened his textbook. He pumped paragraph after paragraph of dusty history into his mind, trying to dry up his curiosity. Greg's concentration slipped, and he remembered again what Mr. Z had said about Moira. He tried to forget all of that, tried to remember the great publishing plans, tried to think about his sales figures for the week and how he wanted to sell 100 units, about how he had to make his goal. But at the end of the period was coming, tick by talk, and then he'd have to walk out into the wide open hallway. Moira had already warned him, I have to show you something. She was going to track him down, and there was nothing he could do about it. So as Miss Sanborn dismissed the class, Greg decided all he could do was just walk out the door, head for gym class, and let his future come, and try not to get another black eye. Chapter 11. Thanks, guys.